Hello, this is Robert Capuccio. Now in the next couple of minutes, I need you to listen to exactly what I tell you to do. Because I'm going to tell you exactly what you should be doing in your career and exactly how you should be doing it. Because I've been where you are and I know what's best for you. Now obviously, I'm not even close to being serious. But how many times do we run into people like this? People who are well-meaning but overzealous nevertheless about giving us advice that we didn't necessarily ask for. Now, each of us have an inbuilt resistance to any perception we have of anyone or anything trying to limit our freedom of choice. This is called reactance, or Dr. Kevin Hogan in his book, The Science of Influence, refers to this as polarity response. However, according to Dr. Hogan, even though none of us like to be dominated by another person, well, actually, that's not true. Some people do like to be dominated by another person, but that's under the title of experimentation, and even they use safe words. But anyway, according to Dr. Hogan, even though we don't really respond in kind to people or circumstances that limit our freedom of choice, what's even more powerful is fear of loss, or the anticipation of regret when we project ourselves in the future. Consider Dr. Matthew Crawford at the University of Arkansas. He took two groups of students who were betting on a gridiron game or an American football game. Now, the first group was told by an associate of Dr. Crawford, whatever you do, bet on Team X. You have no choice, you have to bet on this team, by far the superior team. Well, guess what? Only 23% followed the advice of Dr. Crawford's associate. Why? Because me, you, we're all human beings. We're resistant to people, again, can't overstate this, who limit our freedom of choice. However, in the second group, the associate to Dr. Crawford told a group of students, you really need to bet on Team X because they are the superior team. You have to. But then the students were asked a couple of questions. They were asked if they bet on Team Y in their own volition and the team lost, how would they feel? Well, they would not feel good, obviously, but they wouldn't feel that bad because that's the nature of betting. You pick a team, you might win, you might lose. It's why they call it a gamble, if you will. But then they were asked, what if you chose to ignore the advice of the associate who knew a lot about the teams you were about to bet on, and because you chose to ignore valuable advice, you lost your bet? Well, the students all anticipated a much greater feeling of regret in the future. Over 70% of them in that group chose to go along with the associate's advice. See, in our industry, we're very conditioned to tell people exactly what it is they need to do. This is how you should be training. This is your program design strategy. These are the acute variables that follow. This is exactly how you should be conducting an exercise. And people expect that from us. But the problem is, there's a mental dichotomy between what they expect from us and what they want, and what they're subconsciously resistant to, which is infringement on their freedom of choice. So following Dr. Hogan's advice, if you will, one way we can lower people's resistance to the advice that we need to give them is by asking them questions in the beginning of a session or prior to giving them that advice that lowers their resistance. Questions such as, if you had all the guesswork removed from your program, you knew exactly what program to train on, you knew exactly what the variables of that program were, you knew exactly how to execute each and every exercise, by the way, hint, hint, three-dimensional checkpoints, but you didn't follow that advice, what are some consequences that could occur in the future? And how would that make you feel? Would you regret in the future not following the advice you received today if that was the exact right advice to get you to your goal? Now, as simple as that is, most people anticipating regret in the future would be much more compliant with our advice if we just asked them a couple of questions, allowed them to project in the future, and the fear of loss would lower their level of reactance.